appears, according to the Washington Post, the squad is being challenged. And it's all because of the statements that they've made in support of the Palestinian people. Squad members face Democratic primary challenges over Israel's stances. You see what's happening now? See what's happening? This is why John Fetterman has not spoken up in support of the Palestinian people. This is why Hakeem Jeffrey kisses Benjamin Netanyahu's ass. And this is why Richie Torres does the same thing. Let's go on. So you'll see there's a picture there of Cori Bush. St. Louis County Prosecutor Wesley Bell announced this week he was dropping his month-long bid to unseat one of the country's most outspoken Republican senators, Josh Hawley, to launch a primary campaign to oust fellow Democrat Representative Cori Bush. Here we go. When asked to explain his switch, Bell pointed to Bush's criticism of Israel. You see what's happening now, guys? This is going to happen, all of them. Everybody who speaks out in support of the Palestinian people or criticizes what the state of Israel is doing, they all going to come for your seat. And I already got an ad to show you that's already being used against Rashida Tlaib. We'll get to that in a second. Our world is in a dangerous place and we need steady and effective leadership, Bell told reporters Monday. And we're not getting it in the district. I think we have to stand with our allies, and Israel has always been an ally. Since entering Congress in 2021, Bush has publicly spoken about what she described as the outright massacre in Palestine and argued that the Black and Palestinian struggles for liberation are interconnected. On October 7th, the night Hamas attacked Israel and Israel responded with airstrikes, Bush wrote on social media to condemn the killing of civilians and called for ending U.S. government support for Israel military occupation and apartheid. See, let me tell you something they really don't like. They really don't like it when you use that word apartheid, but that's exactly what it is. Before setting his sights on Bush, Bell had unseated an incumbent to become a county prosecutor in 2018. Now, 5 years later, he is joining a growing cadre of people looking to issue primary challenges to liberal Democrats, several of whom are members of the House Democrats' left flank known as the Squad, who criticize the Israeli government over its policies towards Palestinians. Representatives Ilhan Omar and Summer Lee also drew primary challengers who cite their criticism of Israel and as an issue. George Latimer, the executive of Westchester County, said he is weighing a challenge to Representative Jamal Bowman, another member of the Squad, with Israel as a potentially defining issue in that race. It might be that this becomes a proxy argument between the left and the far left, Latimer told the Washington Post. Support for Israel by the U.S. is a source of growing tension within the Democratic Party. While party leaders and establishment figures have largely been united in support of the 75-year-old democratic nation, the liberal wing of the party has grown louder in challenging the Israeli government over its treatment of Palestinian people in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. I want to show something to you that they did here. Notice how they're talking about the Democratic Party. And notice they said the liberal wing of the party has grown louder in challenging the Israeli government. So they essentially called the Squad members liberals. Just something to note there. The American Israel Public Affairs Committee, also known as AIPAC, which has helped fund challenges to incumbents it considers insufficiently supportive of Israel, declined for now to comment on the brewing congressional races. There will be a time for political action, Marshall Whitman, a spokesman for the group, said in a statement on Tuesday. But right now, our priority is building and sustaining congressional support for Israel's fight to permanently dismantle Hamas, which perpetuated this barbaric terrorist attack on the Jewish state. Let me ask you guys a question, because I've noticed something that people have been saying. Some people are saying, well, if it wasn't for Hamas, this would have never happened to the Palestinian people. So let me ask you a question. 75 years ago, when occupation started, was there a Hamas then? 75 years ago, when they started kicking people out of their homes and seizing their homes, was there a Hamas then? No. When people use that talking point to you, make sure you point that out. Liberal Political Action Committee Justice Democrats said AIPAC is targeting Democrats who criticize Israel and who also challenge economic policies that hurt poor and middle class people. What they really are is a vehicle for Republican dollars to be spent in Democratic primaries to elect Republican adjacent Democrats. This is a spokesperson for the PAC. They said that in an interview on Tuesday. Whitman disputed the characterization from Justice Democrats, saying in a statement, our sole criteria for supporting candidates, both Democrats and Republicans, is their position on supporting the U.S.-Israel relationship. In fact, our PAC has supported almost half of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. It is entirely consistent with progressive values to stand with the Jewish state. Is it consistent with progressive values to stand in support of apartheid? Because you see, that's the question that I would ask. Is it? Netanyahu is right wing. Is it consistent with progressive values to stand with a right wing brutal leader? No, it is not. The people that do these interviews, they don't push back because they want to keep their job at the Washington Post. During Omar's first term, she wrote in 2019 social media posts that Israel's allies in American politics were motivated by money rather than principle, playing into historical stereotypes about wealthy Jews. House Democratic leaders publicly rebuked Omar's comments, to which Omar responded with a statement that said, I unequivocally apologize. Then in June 2021, Omar wrote on social media, we have seen unthinkable atrocities committed by the U.S., Hamas, Israel, Afghanistan, and the Taliban. After Democrats and others criticized her remarks, Omar said she was in no way equating terrorist organizations with democratic countries with well-established judicial systems. Shortly after Republicans took the House majority in 2023, they voted to remove Omar from the Foreign Affairs Committee, with Kevin McCarthy, who was House Speaker at the time, saying Omar made repeated anti-Semitic and anti-American remarks. So what they're basically doing now is that if you criticize the state of Israel in any way, shape, or form, they're going to use the trope that you're anti-Semitic against you. And no country is above criticism. None. But this is what they're doing. Last week, Omar said the U.S. should fully oppose the expected Israeli ground invasion into Gaza, citing concerns about civilian deaths and broadening the conflict globally. Omar is now facing two challengers in the Democratic primary. So she has two challengers. One of those challengers, Air Force veteran Tim Peterson, criticized Omar's comments on Israel and said in an interview with The Post, this isn't the first time or the last time. Ilhan will parrot Iran's talking points. A spokeswoman for the other Democratic challenger in the race, attorney Sarah Gad, pointed to Gad's previous comments accusing Omar of using divisive rhetoric that serves no useful purpose other than to inflame the situation. You know what? When Justice Democrats started, you know what they didn't figure out how to deal with? The Israel issue. They never really, I don't know if these politicians were coached before they actually took these positions in the House. But it appears to me that it wasn't explained to them how to deal with this particular issue, which is a tough issue to deal with in DC, because the majority of people in the Democratic Party and the Republican Party agreed to support the state of Israel. And of course, they made that piece of legislation where they said unwavering support for Israel, which means that Netanyahu can do whatever he wants to do. And the US government is going to continue to support him. They didn't coach them on how to deal with this issue. Moving on, a spokesman for Omar referred to comments she posted on social media highlighting what she called downright genocidal rhetoric from Representative Brian Mast and insulting and Islamophobic advertising directed at her from AIPAC. Yeah, and that has happened. Like, it's, let's go to Summer Lee. Lee, whose congressional district includes Pittsburgh, explained her opposition to the Standing with Israel resolution in the House, writing in a statement that the measure does not acknowledge the overwhelming loss of life and humanity of Palestinians, which move us further from, not closer to, a just, lasting peace. Patel said in a Monday interview that she would have voted for the resolution. Our current representative has been voting on the fringe. You have an obligation to be there for your community when they're suffering, to understand their plan and reflect that when you vote. Whew. Boy. In 2022, Lee was elected to Congress despite an ad blitz in the primary by a pro-Israel super PAC. She won the primary by fewer than 1,000 votes, beating a candidate who had, among other things, called for strengthening the relationship between the United States and Israel. So just remember, Summer Lee, her race was close. She's going to be one of the ones they're going to try to get out. They'll probably try to get her out next when she's up for re-election. Watch. Bowman, who was an educator who ran in the Democratic primary in 2020, a staunch defender of, who ran against Elliot Engel, a staunch defender of Israel. Bowman won despite millions of dollars in ads from pro-Israel groups that supported Engel. According to a June 2020 letter by Bowman, the future congressman said he opposed the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement. And this is where it caused uproar with Jamal Bowman and, I forgot the name of the group. DSA, sorry. It caused an uproar between Jamal Bowman and DSA, because one of the principles that DSA has is that you support BDS and you oppose what the state of Israel is doing to the Palestinians. So that was a controversial thing for him, where they were actually deciding whether or not they wanted to vote him out of DSA. I remember that. In covering that, he said, I also believe that Palestinians are entitled to the same human rights, safety from violence, and self-determination in the state of their own. But here's the thing, you can't even say that. Even if you try to both sides it, which is what Jamal Bowman has tried to do, they'll still come after you. So here we go here. Bowman boycotted a joint session of Congress where a top Israeli official was scheduled to speak. From Israel to India, we must hold our allies accountable when it comes to human rights violations and the abuses of far-right governments, Bowman wrote on social media, which is why I will not be attending the Israeli President Isaac Herzog's address to Congress tomorrow. Last week, Bowman voted against the Standing with Israel resolution in the House. Yeah, so we knew that this was going to happen. That they will come for anybody who speaks against it. And it's not just that. So there's already an ad targeting Rashida Tlaib from the Democratic Majority for Israel. We're airing a new TV ad in the Detroit area. Democrats support Israel's right to defend itself, but Representative Rashida sides with those who want to destroy it. Watch this ad. Watch this.
She's one of only 7 Democrats in Congress to vote against missile protection for Israel. one of only 9 Democrats against condemning the brutal attack on Israel by Hamas. Her legislation would allow the terrorists to rearm themselves, and she refuses to answer even this horrific question.
You can't comment about Hamas terrorists chopping off babies' heads?
Tell Rashida Tlaib she's on the wrong side of history and humanity.
Let me pause here for a second. You notice how they inserted this piece here about the beheaded babies, which was already debunked? But notice how they're still spreading that lie, that propaganda. At the end of this ad, they said, tell Rashida Tlaib she's on the wrong side of history. Based on the poll results I showed you earlier, technically she's on the right side of history because the majority of people polled agree with a ceasefire. And I show you this to reference this, because there's more. Reid Hoffman is also trying to create PACs to remove squad members from Congress. Now, you got to know about Reid Hoffman. Reid Hoffman is the co-founder of LinkedIn, but Reid Hoffman, he's a billionaire. He has given money to numerous candidates, including one of them being Crystal Ball. When Crystal Ball ran for Congress, he had a PAC that supported her campaign. Now, you'll see it. This is what I was telling you. They all coming out. See the billionaires. Look, Reid Hoffman-backed PAC may fund primary campaign against progressives Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush. You see this? So that's Reid Hoffman. So it says a political action committee funded largely by LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman may be on the brink of launching a primary campaign to oust Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush, according to the billionaire's longtime political advisors, Dimitri Melhorn. Melhorn told CNBC that he recently approached the heads of mainstream Democrats PAC about the idea of backing a primary effort against 2 progressive lawmakers. Tlaib and Bush are part of the so-called squad that also includes progressive New York Democrat representatives AOC and Jamal Bowman. Now, why is this important? Because it all goes back to money and corruption and electoral politics. This is what happens as long as we have PACs and super PACs and corporate money in electoral politics. Now, Eric had created this a while back, and this is what we were saying, like we need a movement around this. Money, corruption, demand, solutions. MCDS, money, big money runs everything in Washington, D.C. The answer to all why questions in politics is the same. Why are Democrats so weak? Why are Republicans so vicious? It's because they're paid to be that way. Corruption. Our so-called representatives do not represent us. They represent the billionaires, banks, and mega corporations. They must be called out relentlessly as they are corrupt. Demands. Having a clear list of demands is crucial, and fixing big money in politics and government needs to be at the top. And then we'll get to 11 demands for real democracy. And then finally, solutions. Flowing from demands are the solutions. A movement has to be about more than just pointing out all the problems we face. It needs to provide a vision of a better world and a path to reaching it. So when we look at the demands, 11 demands for real democracy. The number one thing is fix big money in politics and government. This is what I was telling Dr. West as well. Until you fix this, you are not going to change the political system that we have in this country, which is inherently corrupt. And it's corrupt because you have corporate money and the military industrial complex and Wall Street. They all bought into the political system. 2, and I can put this in the chat so you guys can look at this on your own time as well. Healthcare for all. Now, Eric goes further and says, implement a U.S. national healthcare system, which is actually better than Medicare for all. That's closer to what they have in the UK. 3, a minimum standard of living for everyone. Everyone. 4, end the wars. End the wars, all of them. Disband NATO. These things are important. 5, reject censorship. Look at where we are now with people being deplatformed. Got to reject the censorship. 6, racial and criminal justice reform. This includes providing reparations for ADOS. This includes ends mass incarceration and address the root cause of crime, which is poverty. 7, respond to the climate emergency. Implement a non-corporate Green New Deal program. 8, immigration reform. Abolish ICE. Notice you don't really hear the squad members talk about this much anymore. Notice you don't hear them say abolish ICE much anymore. 9, an election system we can trust. This includes ranked choice voting or star voting systems. 10, revamp taxation and funding. Abolish all taxes except for highly progressive income tax, wealth tax, and taxes on large corporations. This also includes establish public banks. And last but not least, 11, democratize the enterprise. Provide federal funds and incentives for employee-owned and controlled businesses. Enforce antitrust laws. That's important. We just talked about the story with Ice Cube and the NBA investigation. The NBA is violating antitrust laws. We don't have that much in place to make sure these things don't happen or that these companies are held accountable after doing that. So these things are important. And this is why we're sharing this is because, and I'll put this in the chat as well, is because if we had a movement around these issues in particular, then we may be able to see some type of change in the political system. But the reality is, if we don't have public financing of elections, these PACs, like AIPAC, the PAC Reid Hoffman is trying to start, this isn't going to go away. This issue will always be present. So that's important. That's important.